Today we are going to take some of the literature and analysis skills that we've already been working on, but apply them to one of Shakespeare's sonnets. Now I know that Shakespeare's language is a lot different from how we speak, but we already have been practicing with the little tools that we have, and I'm going to show you the best way to kind of translate the sonnet so you can better comprehend what it's trying to say. So the first things first, you always read the questions first. Remember, all of this is actually practicing for your EOC at the end of your English 1 course. So first thing we do is we read the questions. The first question reads, what is the theme of the poem? Second question, what is the impact of the personification of death in line 11 on the meaning of the poem? Number 3, what is the impact of the word choice, quote, darling buds of May, on the meaning of the poem? So now, when I read this poem after I've comprehended it, I need to be looking for death in line 11. I also need to be looking for darling buds of May and start thinking about what that might mean. But I also see an important phrase here, word choice. When we look at word choice, we are really talking about a term called connotation. You can remember this. You should have had this for the past 3 years of English. But connotation is the emotion associated with a word. So not only am I looking for the phrase, darling buds of May, I'm looking for the feeling, the emotion associated with this phrase. Okay, so now for comprehension. You can't analyze something if you don't understand it. So first things first, as I read this, I, as the reader, am going to translate what I already know into modern day English. I'm going to show you physically on the screen how my thinking would be. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I know thee means you. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Well, thou also means you, and we know art means are. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Ooh, I know I'm supposed to be looking for that, so I better mark the text so I can come back to it. And summer's lease hath all too short a date. Hath, I know means have, or has. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines. The eye of heaven shines. What might shine in the sky? I think that this might be the sun. And often his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, but your eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou art. Nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So as long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this and gives life to thee. There I see the mention of death, so I need to make sure I mark that as well, and that should be capitalized. Okay. So now I need to go back and figure out what this poem is saying. So should I compare you to a summer's day? You are lovely and temperate. So far this has a positive, loving connotation. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease has all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines. So sometimes too hot the sun shines, and dims his gold complexion. And every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. So I'm seeing a comparison of this person to the changing seasons. So we know that seasons don't last forever, they change. And I know with seasons come different cycles in plant life. Things bloom, they blossom, they flourish, they die. It's the cycle, it's the circle of life. But it says your eternal summer shall not fade. So when I think of summer, I think of like your prime living. It's your prime state of being. So he's saying in this poem, but your eternal summer, your prime part of your life shall not die. The core of you shall not die, even when death comes down and takes you away. It says, as long as men can breathe and eyes can see and everything's living, this gives life to thee, meaning this poem. So I've written you down and you will live eternally because I've described you. And as long as there's people to read it, you will live eternally. So, now that I understand the basics of the poem, I have to answer my questions. First question, what is the theme of the poem? Well, I need to take away a life lesson from this. I should not reference anything about seasons or who the character is describing or plants. It needs to be something bigger. So here's an example response. The theme is that love knows no bounds or limits. I know this because in the text it states, when eternal lines to time thou growest, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this and gives life to thee. This supports my claim because it shows that love will never die because the author has expressed it through poetry. But my theme is that love knows no bounds or limits. It's not saying that the theme is that the author wrote a poem about someone he loves. There's a difference. Okay? So make sure when you write your own response in your practice that you are giving evidence, explaining what did you read that made you think this. Next question. What is the impact of the personification of death in line 11 on the meaning of the poem? Okay, so understanding is the same word as meaning. So how did this help me understand the poem better? So I find the line that I've already marked. It says, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. Well, when death is personified, we think of death as maybe the grim reaper, someone to come to take someone's life away. So the fact that death was personified definitely has an impact on the poem. Here's an example response to that question. The impact that the personification of death had on the meaning of the poem was that it helped the reader to understand the author's emotions by setting a serious tone within the poem. It made the reader realize that even death couldn't take the author's love away. Meaning, if death came down as this embodied presence, it could not take the author's love away. That's my personal interpretation. As long as you can back it up with evidence from the text and it makes sense and relates to the text, then that your answer should be acceptable. Last question. What is the impact of the word choice, darling buds of May, on the meaning of the poem? So again, if I hear word choice, I instantly need to think connotation. I'm thinking emotions associated with a word. So when I see the word darling buds of May, when I hear darling, that's a term of endearment. That means that you really care about someone. If you say, oh my darling, oh look at those darling puppies. They're adorable, they're sweet. There's adoration and care for that person, place, or thing. So, I need to go into the text and see how it's used. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease has all too short a date. So I take away that this is saying that things might try to shake up the good times, but no matter what, they still exist and they still stay strong. Here is a sample response to that question. The impact that the phrase darling buds of May had on the meaning of the poem was through its delivery of a tender and loving description of the author's poem's subject. The word darling has an endearing and loving emotion associated with it. Since the line is a part of a description of the subject, it shows that the author truly cared for and adored the subject. So therefore, this is correct because it's talking about word choice. It referenced the connotation or the emotion associated with the word darling and explained how that connected to what the author was talking about.